Next on the list is the 815 Lobbyist Registry. There was an awkward silence there. Yeah. On that matter, it's been moved by Marula. Do I have a seconder first just to get it on the table? Steph, here in the roadmap, and I'm following the clerk's direction.
Chairman, we had it up at the top earlier when Nando was here, so it's not in your roadmap. So right now you would have to receive the report at this point, because I had moved it in your roadmap.
Because it had been suggested that we bump it up, but we hadn't bumped it up.
Correct. So now you would need to receive the report here as item 8.50.
Yes. So receipt of the report, it's in front of us for disposition, correct? On process. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And I'm just on process through you to clerk. So if we receive this report, we're then going to deal with the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, item 9.2 will be lifted from the table, and then it will be addressed as the actual motion that was tabled with the new bylaw that's before you.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that process. So we will be dealing with that. Thank you.
Councillor Whitehead.
Okay, Mr. Chair, help me understand this.
On process.
Well, yeah, that's the clarification I'm looking for. So earlier, we heard delegation. I had asked, I suggested I wanted to ask the staff a question. You had indicated that when we would deal with that, not on the 9.2 motion, I thought it was under the information piece. So I just need some guidance on what's the best time to ask staff the specific question relative to the presentation earlier today.
Here, Mr. Chairman, if you're asking on the report that's before you right now, now would be the time to ask the question.
Well, that report is a product, yes, of the consultation, and there was a suggestion there was a lack of consultation. That's the question I want to ask.
You could ask the question now. Staff is here. The report is here. Can everybody else hear me? The microphones are up as loud as I can go. Okay, sorry. Yes, you could ask the question at this point. The report is before you. Thank you,
Madam Clerk. So can I ask a question? So can I ask staff, it was presented, I believe, by the home builders this morning that they made it clear that they wanted to be part of the process and provide their input into this process before this information report was concluded. So could I just get an explanation from staff what actually transpired and why their positions were not, or the opportunity wasn't prevailed to them?
So staff were directed to provide for a consultation. And so that consultation occurred, and the input from everybody who provided either written input, there was public advertisement, public notice that there was a consultation, and there was also the afternoon into the evening listening to the various delegations who wanted to have input. All of that was done, and that is provided back to today to General Issues Committee to consider. It was a consultation in order to gather all of that input. That's how it was advertised, and that's how it was conducted.
So did staff receive a notice from the home builders that they want to further be consulted on the lobby registry, yes or no?
Through the Deputy Mayor, I'm afraid I can't answer that as a yes or no. The consultation was not intended to be an ongoing iterative process. The consultation was, there was public notice given, there was a period of time for written submissions to be made, and that was provided in the notice. It said this is the period of time we will be receiving written submissions, and then there will be a day for the delegations to be heard, and that was in June. And that was the nature of the consultation as it was directed and as it was advertised and as all of the delegations were advised.
Okay, so we heard a presentation today. Was there anything new in that presentation that wasn't considered in this information report?
Janice?
So I was not actually at the consultation, so full disclosure. However, I did not hear anything new from the Hamilton Home Builders representative today in respect of all of the consultations that we've heard, the written consultations we've received. Nothing today was different than the variety of inputs we have been gathering through the consultation.
So then I would conclude from that those concerns that were raised again today that are not reflected in this information report would suggest that staff didn't agree that those were issues worth reflecting in the information report.
Just to be clear, Councillor, I believe council had provided staff with a list of outstanding issues. All of them are included as the amendments in the appendix. They're all referenced both to in the information report. Those were approved when we dealt with the public session originally, and now staff have reported back on those issues that council considered outstanding at the time. Any new issues then would have to be, or revisions or matters would need to be incorporated into the appendix if you wanted to introduce new ones today.
Okay, so I take it through this consultation and through that process that staff didn't see a need to introduce any new concepts in this information report.
So what staff have done is to gather together all of the responses, explanations, et cetera, to the list of questions that came out of that day in June when the delegations were heard. And so what staff have done is provide explanations, provide responses, provide information, and in areas where there's an opportunity to provide an amendment into the draft bylaw, staff have provided the wording of what might be adopted by GIC and by council as an appropriate amendment to the draft bylaw. So that is before council. What was distributed is fully covered off in the report, but was distributed just a couple of hours ago for ease of reference, is the actual draft bylaw as it existed in June, supplemented by additional provisions that can be selected or not by council.
My questions.
So just to be clear, before we move on, the shaded areas in the new appendix that was distributed by clerks today, just procedurally, Madam Clerk, we had an appendix that was included with the regular agenda. You've now distributed a new appendix with some subsections in them. If council wanted to revise the original appendix with those new shaded sections, does it take a motion then to amend the original one to make that happen?
I would just prefer to get a motion to delete and replace the Appendix A. If you want to choose the one with the shaded, to delete and replace the Appendix A that's in 9.2 with the one that's before you. If
there was a desire, though, to pick and choose from those suggested amendments, how do you propose to do that then?
Then I'll just amend the original one by working from this.
So there you, from a procedural perspective, just so you know, we have two appendices in front of us. Just don't want to make this any more complicated than it is. I don't have any speakers at this point in time. Now I'm going to ask for Councillor Jackson. Okay, we're on the information report right now. Are there any questions on the information report? Councillor Jackson.
I've been following your leadership all day, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to Janice. So Janice, as we're clear, as the Deputy Mayor said, the yellow sheet before us, 9.2. I turn to page 7 of 8 at the bottom, Janice, paragraph 8. Number 8, paragraphs 1 and 2 under number 8. I want to move that as an amendment into the body of the new revised bylaw, which is the $100. That's a gray shaded area. I mentioned this several times over the past few months, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to Janice. This is when I would do that, Janice, lifting that gray area and putting that $100 in.
You would do that when Councillor McCaddy lifts the motion under 9.2.
Okay.
So right now we're on the information report. This is basically our staff reporting back on all the issues that council raised during that June session that Janice referenced. This is for information only. After we have asked and exhausted the questions to staff, I will ask for receipt of the information, and then we will move on to, I believe Councillor McCaddy will be lifting the actual bylaw that you've referenced, and it will be open to amendment at that point in time.
Okay. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I've been one guy who's been following your leadership all day.
I really appreciate that because...
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I just want to ask Janice, as City Solicitor, Janice, to get the 100 in that gray box at the appropriate time. I need to move that as an amendment. Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Janice. Through you to...
Madam Clerk.
Through you to the clerk, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, you have two options. When Councillor McCaddy lifts item 9.2 and puts the original motion on the table with the original Appendix B, if the committee wishes to approve all of the changes that are in the new yellow version before you, all you have to do is put forward a motion to delete the original Appendix A and replace it with the one that's before you. If you're not going to approve them all and you're going to pick and choose, then I will take amendments from the one that's before you and amend the original one that's in there. When we get to that point, we can certainly walk you through it.
Are you following the clerk?
I thank you, Legislative Assistant Paprella. I think I'll wait till Councillor McCaddy lifts it, and I think then everyone will say, Tom, now's your time to do it. Thank you.
Do you need a diagram?
Councillor Powers.
Mr. Chair, I've been following your lead all day, and I've been understanding where you've been taking us.
We're good on 8:15 then. It's the information report. I need a... Sorry, Councillor Pasuta.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Collins. I've got a question. I mean, part of this process, but on the report down here, and Famota line just cut me off, okay? Won't be the first time I've been cut off. So, with this going forward, with the Lobbyist Registry, if I may go back to the Canada Bread Maple Leaf episodes, where economic development planning, under their umbrella, went forward with it, did all the communications, unbeknown to council and the mayor's office, I believe. With this in place, what would happen if that process was coming forward? Would everybody know that Maple Leaf or Canada Bread is meeting with councillors and staff? Well, they didn't meet with councillors, they met with staff.
Janice.
So through the Deputy Mayor, I'm going to try to take a stab at that. So here's how this draft bylaw would contemplate things happening. If there were to be lobbying, which in effect that's what that would be, of a public office holder, which would be either an elected official or a member of senior management team, as defined in the bylaw, then there would be a request under this bylaw to the lobbyist registrar for a period of confidentiality, to not have to register, in other words, to not have it publicly known that those discussions were going on, because it might financially impact the city's ability to have those discussions. So that would be for a period of time that the lobbyist registrar would determine as appropriate.
And to follow on that, it would happen then after the fact. There would be a registration eventually. It would come after negotiations.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that. So now if I want to go to, bear with me, if I want to go to my ward and I have my businesses, and they're basically farm businesses, and they want to do something which, you know, you got a John Deere, you got a Case, you've got a New Holland. If you want, they want to do something, and if they lobbied, that competitor may know what, no, this guy wants to put this building up for expand his business. Would that be lobbying then if they came to me and wanted to meet with me on an issue like that?
Janice's for businesses in the ward?
So through the Deputy Mayor, those are all captured under the definition of constituent and are therefore exempt from the lobbyist registry bylaw. Exempt from having to register as a lobbyist.
Okay. All right, Janice, thank you very much. Mr. Deputy Mayor, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Whitehead.
So just dovetailing on that, if I initiate the meeting, which has happened, whether it was the chair of the Economic Development Committee with GB French to keep them in Hamilton, initiate meetings with other potential investors in this community to get clarification. I'm initiating the meeting, not them. How would that qualify?
So through the Deputy Mayor, the who initiates the meeting is really not germane. The Lobbyist Registry bylaw would provide that either they are required to register because they fit the bylaw, or they're exempt because they're a constituent, or there's some other exception. But who initiates that is not germane.
And the way the bylaw is written now, and I notice you got a highlight on Appendix A, but without that, where's the emphasis on the lobby register? Is it on the councillor or on the lobbyist?
The onus is on the lobbyist to ensure that they are appropriately registering. And so the onus is never on the public office holder to question, query, examine, etc. The only time the onus shifts to the public office holder is when, as a result of an investigation, the lobbyist registrar takes the step of prohibiting a lobbyist from lobbying for a period of time because they've contravened and violated, etc. And then the lobbyist registrar would notify public office holders that Mr. X is banned from lobbying for a period of time.
Okay, so in Appendix 3, it's got emphasis that the onus is on the lobbyist register. Is that a recommendation coming from staff that should be considered by council? And is that why it's not formally in the bylaw? It's one of the suggestions you want us to consider?
So the way the bylaw is drafted, the earlier draft of the bylaw, it was definitely always that the onus was on the lobbyist to register. But this piece in the shaded section under 7 sub 3 simply clarifies that. It's a sort of a belts and suspenders.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is it questions on the Appendix A now? I just don't want to mess things up. I'm following your lead. So just want to be sure. Are we on the Appendix A, the new one?
We are on 815. I believe all of the changes to the appendix are included in 815, and they have been incorporated into 9.2.
Right. So questions on that?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Appreciate that. And I appreciate Janice's clarification on the Maple Leaf situation, but going through all the material, where does it state, or does it need to state in the bylaw, that the lobbyist registrar has that position or power to create or approve a blackout period, so to speak? I didn't pick it up in here.
So through the Deputy Mayor, just if you'll indulge me for a minute, it's in the earlier version, and that's why it's not shaded. It wasn't an addition, it was always there.
So it's in the one, it's not in Schedule A in front of us, it's in the bylaw. It's here, but not shaded.
It's through the Deputy Mayor, okay. So it's in 5 sub 2. The lobbyist registrar may exempt lobbying from some or all of the requirements of this bylaw if he or she is satisfied in advance by a lobbyist that registration could reasonably be expected to prejudice the economic interests of the City of Hamilton or the competitive position of the City of Hamilton. So it's there.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And going to question, because we had a resident, I think, has CC'd all of us today with regards to the lobbyist registry. And the question is, and I'm going to try and be very generic on this, but it involves, say, developers, planners, and the Hamilton Conservation Authority, and issues on a development. So do our staff, are they uncovered? They're not covered under this lobbyist registry to say they have any requirement with regards to dealing with HCA, Hamilton Conservation Authority, on mutual issues on development.
So through the Deputy Mayor, under lobbyist exemptions, under Section 6, lobbyists do not include a local board. So that would capture the Conservation Authority.
Okay, great, thank you for that. And if I could just ask, just on terminology in a couple of the sections, just going through, I guess it's just the way it's reading it, maybe I'm just reading it off wrong. On page 4 of 8, under sub B, 1, it says that a registration or return is on the lobbyist registry not more than 3 days after it is filed. Should it not be within 3 days after it is filed? It just seems to be confusing, saying not more than 3 days. Am I wrong?
Through the Deputy Mayor, I guess it's just a preference for how council would like to see it worded. It would mean the same thing.
Means the same thing. So not more than 3 days. So they have 3 days in which to put this on the registry. Okay. Where was the other? One more, I think, Mr. Chairman. On page 7 of 8, it says 7 of 8. Paragraph 7, 1, D as in Donald. The name, so the lobbyist shall file a registration for each subject matter he or she intends to lobby on, or at least one business day before the first lobbying, etc. And it says D, the name of the individual or individuals he or she is lobbying. Would it not also be an issue? Because does it always have to be an individual? It could be an issue, it could be a report, it could be an application, could it not? It's not always an individual.
So through the Deputy Mayor, unless I'm misunderstanding the question, the intention here is that the lobbyist would indicate who it is that they are lobbying, and then the next provision E is the subject matter about which they're lobbying. So it is an individual. It's, I, Fred Smith, intend to lobby Councillor whoever about this subject. So it is who they're lobbying, as well as the subject matter of their lobbying. I just want to go back. The 3 days is the time period that the lobbyist registrar must post this publicly. So that 3 days that you were asking earlier about, that's the lobbyist registrar, that's the obligation to put it on the public registry.
Understood that. It's just the way it's worded. It's not more than 3 days as opposed to within 3 days of them receiving it.
And I just didn't want you to think it was that the lobbyist has to do something within 3 days. It's the registrar.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, thank you. I just want to clarify, and I appreciate the response so I can forward a comment and response back to the resident. I think that's emailed all of us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All good questions. Councillor Powers.
A couple of things. You referenced section 5.2 about the blackout period. Does it have a finite time, or is it infinite? Can be extended? Is it left particularly vague in order to allow the flexibility?
Yes, through the Deputy Mayor, it's in the discretion of the lobbyist registrar to turn their mind to the appropriate period of time that might need to be confidential for.
Okay. Second question is, Councillor Pasuta raised the issue about dialogue between a business or an individual. Under the definitions in the first page, it talks about constituents. Can you point me to where it says that these are permissible? I'm looking under the lobbying exemptions 5.1 and all the various parts, and perhaps it's just maybe in the vernacular or using, but nothing jumps out at me to allow those dialogues to take place.
So it's a combination of two provisions, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
It is under 5 sub 1L, communication with the public office holder by their constituent regarding that constituent's business or financial interest.
Okay.
And then if you turn to the definition of constituent,
an owner or an operator or a business or other entity located in the city.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, it says in the city.
That'd be for the mayor.
Oh, for the mayor. In the board. Okay, so then that just opens the question. So what if it's somebody who has some business, if they're an owner or an operator outside of the ward, yet wants to have dialogue with the ward councillor, then they would apply for a blackout, an exemption to allow those conversations to take place?
If indeed they felt that those conversations should be blacked out, that should not be publicly noted on the registry during a period of time, then they would make application.
Okay, I'm sure that every one of us has these discussions in every one of our wards. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, I have no.
Oh, sorry, excuse me. One last one.
Yes, sir.
My apologies. Section 11 refers to conducting an inquiry in reasonable grounds to believe the contravention. Do we have any ability in order to levy a penalty if indeed the person is contravention, or is it we have to move it on to the it has to be a contravention under the Criminal Code of Canada? What if they're just in breach of what we're doing and they persist?
Through the Deputy Mayor. So of the options available, which would include a charge under the Provincial Offences Act or other penalty or a ban on lobbying, the Accountability and Transparency Subcommittee recommended and went with the ban on lobbying.
Hey, that's... Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you.
No problem.
Just on that note, I'm all in support of this, so I just want to ask a quick question. If there were charges done or if there was a ban on lobbying, that's for if there is any serious concerns. The flip side to this, in my opinion, is what if somebody decides to abuse this system and starts to register complaints at $100 a shot? Is there anything in place, just as there is at the OMB, if it's vexatious, then all the court costs are awarded back to the person who has been put to the OMB for a vexatious reason? Is there something in place for someone who abuses this, or it is vexatious, clearly? Is there the counterpart to this available?
So through the Deputy Mayor, I'm not sure. We'll have to take a look whether there's something where the lobbyist registrar can basically dispose of a complaint on the basis that it's frivolous or vexatious. But I would expect that even if it's not in the underlying municipal act, that there's the ability of the lobbyist registrar to make pretty short shift of continued chronic complaints.
And I get this, and I'm 100% with it. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I also want people to take this seriously. Mm-hmm. It's not something that can be used to throw mud at the wall and see what happens either. So to me, that just creates a whole new... Sorry? I'm sorry, I just want to ask if there's the counterpart to the other. Thank you.
Okay, I have Councillor Marula for first time, and then Councillor Ferguson.
Just quickly, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to Janice. Janice, taking into account the total fiasco of not meeting deadlines in our Integrity Commissioner, I know that once we look at that particular contract in the future, we should be building in penalties for the deadline not being met, so it's not discretionary at any given time, because he needs all the autonomy that he has without us being involved, because he can't be a subordinate to council. Having said that, at the front end, we need to create a policy or parameters to protect ourselves from the understanding that certain investigations should only take a certain amount of time. So having said that, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to Janice, have we built in punitive measures within the parameters at the beginning, rather than being subjected to that to a similar fiasco in the future.
Janice.
Just so I'm understanding, through the Deputy Mayor, is the councillor asking whether we've built in some remedy in the event that the lobbyist registrar is tardy in reporting? So
that's correct.
I would suggest that type of thing is more appropriately dealt with in the contract when we've completed our recruit.
Okay.
And that we would.
So it can be built into the hiring process.
Okay, so then I will then provide that direction or a motion. Let's put a motion for it since the Integrity Commissioner issue was such a significant issue. So I'll move.
I'll have to come back to you when this is an information report, but I will keep that in mind when we deal with 9.2, which was the bylaw itself. And I have Councillor Ferguson and then Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to pick up on what Councillor Johnson was saying and just twig something in my mind about the vexatious part. And we've seen that in the IC position where, you know, if someone wants to get a rush out of trying to embarrass a public official and they go down the lobbyist registry and see that Joe met with one of the members of council, then makes assumptions of what they were meeting about and goes public with those assumptions, and if they're wrong, what are the consequences of that?
So through the Deputy Mayor, this bylaw would have really no bearing on individuals speculating publicly about what they believe public office holders are doing or not doing. It's not really within the purview of this kind of bylaw to deal with that type of thing. I think the fair answer to somebody speculating in that way publicly would be put your complaint in and have the lobbyist registrar deal with it. But there's not a bylaw. This is not a bylaw that would be able to deal with people speculating publicly about what they think is going on. The bylaw is an opportunity for somebody to put in a complaint and have it looked at and disposed of by the lobbyist registrar according to the bylaw.
So if somebody looked at the lobbyist registry and saw that Joe met with a member of council and speculated about what he was meeting with and makes some false allegations publicly, is that something under this bylaw the commissioner could investigate and issue penalties for?
Through the Deputy Mayor, the lobbyist registrar will investigate on a complaint basis only. So an individual would have to lodge a complaint with the lobbyist registrar in order to start an investigation or have an inquiry occur that the lobbyist registrar would look into. The lobbyist registrar under this bylaw would not be investigating matters because they were being speculated upon. It would simply be engaged by a complaint.
Okay, so there's no avenue to get consequences for that type of situation then? In our business, perception means a lot, and somebody could tarnish that perception by making a false allegation, and there's no consequences for it. They can just speculate. This person met this senior management officer and try to damage their reputation. Someone on SMT, and that I got to tell you, that worries me a touch, because we've seen some vexatious complaints that have been determined to be vexatious by the Integrity Commissioner, and the consequences there are $100, which is, anyhow, it's something to think about.
Okay, I have Powers, Pasuda, and Whitehead.
So just help me with process. We're going through the draft bylaw at the present time, which constitutes Section A of the recommendations that are before us.
Right now we're on 815, which is an information report that summarizes the amendments that were made to the appendix that you have that we will consider under 9.2.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. So just to be straight up and following what Councilor Marula has indicated, this is me. I will not support Section C. At this time, I'm not prepared to combine the lobbyist registrar with the IC. We have multiple complaints that are long overdue. Why give them something more to do which can't be completed in a timely manner? So I'll be voting against item C when it finds its way.
Janice, on that issue?
If I can just, through the Deputy Mayor, thank you, provide a little bit of explanation as to how this could be envisioned to be implemented. So in the event that council enacts the Lobbyist Registry bylaw, what is contemplated is that early in the new term of council, a panel of interested councillors would be involved in the recruit, that a recruit would be run and there would be a number of interviews and candidates would be interviewed, and that the result of that process, which is likely to take, I would think, 3 months or so, would be the ultimate appointment of a lobbyist registrar / integrity commissioner, likely to coincide with the actual coming into force and effect of the bylaw, so that there would be sufficient lead time for that to occur, and if indeed the current integrity commissioner wished to apply for that and be considered, that would be part of that process, but it's quite a different skill set that's contemplated for a lobbyist registrar than an integrity commissioner. So that at the conclusion of the term of the current integrity commissioner, which is coming up in the spring of 2015, it may be that there would be a new appointee to that in any case. So that's sort of the way it's been contemplated, if that assists.
Other than just correction, is the integrity commissioner's contract expires in July of 2015.
Okay. I have Councillors Pasuta, Whitehead, and McCaddy now. Councillor Pasuta.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Collins, and sorry I'm bringing this up again. So a couple of things through you, Deputy Mayor. So the funding here for this is already in place. It doesn't need to go through the 2015 budget. Is that correct?
Under 9.1, the expectation is that, I think as was just referenced, we would be approving it. There is no funding source, though, identified in terms of how we'd accommodate that in the interim. So the expectation, Mike, that's probably a better question for Mike in terms of the finances associated with this initiative.
Through you, Mr.
Yep.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, with respect to the ongoing annual operating costs that are identified in recommendations B and C, those would represent pressures on the 2015 operating budget. With respect to recommendation D, there's an identified funding source that's a one-time cost, and it's the unallocated capital levy. So again, with respect to B and C, those would represent operating pressures in the 2015 tax-supported operating budget.
Okay, thank you for that. Back to something that Councillor Ferguson brought up. And in my time here, almost 8 years now, I think I've been, in the early years, I was lobbied a few times by some individuals or companies. That doesn't happen anymore. I've had enough of that. So my assistant, Lynn, she knows that, so I don't deal with that. I'm going to take an instant, and I want to ask Janice through you, Deputy Mayor. So on this down here, as Councillor Ferguson indicated, I have a certain pipeline going through my ward, and they've working getting it through, have residents with issues. I ask them to come in to meet me, or someplace where we can meet, but at their convenience they come in. So maybe 2, 3 come in and want some information. We sit down for a half an hour, and go over what's going on and how they're going to do things for the community with this certain pipeline. Somebody from the media or an individual picks up that they see these certain people coming in, they know where they're from. All of a sudden, is somebody going to say, or can they say they're lobbying me, and how do I react to that? Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, please.
I think, as you've noted, the pipeline's in your area, so it might become a constituent issue. But Janice?
So there's, through the Deputy Mayor, yes, there's probably a number of answers to that, and one would be the constituent exemption, but certainly another would be that it's not a matter of lobbying if you are trying to resolve issues that your constituents are experiencing in terms of something that is in the ward. I mean, that's not a matter of lobbying, that's a matter of conducting the obligations of a councillor.
And Janice and through Deputy Mayor, I understand that, but if somebody else picks up and sees them coming in and identifies them as certain individuals, then they file a complaint against me. How does that go then? Through you, Deputy Mayor, please.
So through the Deputy Mayor, again, and I want to come back to this point, the complaint would be about the lobbyist failing to register. So it would not be a complaint against a councillor. It would be a complaint about a lobbyist who failed to register, and the lobbyist registrar would have to make the inquiries of the lobbyist as to whether or not there was lobbying going on and make a determination in that regard. So the onus is completely on the lobbyist, and the investigations will be about whether or not the lobbyist has registered or not. So in that regard, hopefully it's not just a tool to criticize public office holders and try to attack public office holders, whether they be elected officials or senior management team. So the issue is whether the lobbyist has complied with the Lobbyist Registry bylaw.
Okay, I just want to tie this up real quick then. But okay, so you're saying, Janice, through Deputy Mayor Collins, that if this particular company comes in, I've asked them, and somebody files a complaint, they would be a lobbyist coming in to see me, although I've asked them to come and visit me?
No.
No? Did I misunderstand that?
So through the Deputy Mayor, if the meeting is resolving issues and not the lobbyist coming to try to seek services, or there's a list of what constitutes lobbying, and I won't purport to read it, but if really what's gone on is not even lobbying, then that's an absolute defense to the lobbyist to say, I wasn't lobbying, I was asked to come in to try to resolve some issues. But the complaint will be if there is a complaint, it would be to the lobbyist registrar about the lobbyist's failure.
Okay, thank you, Janice. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Collins.
Yeah, on the timelines, which was noted, we tried to deal with that through the original bylaw with the Integrity Commissioner. We were told and advised that you couldn't limited the time of investigation, or you would potentially be compromising the investigation. Is that not correct?
There are probably a number of ways that really can be wrestled to the ground, and certainly it will not be difficult to overcome the timeline issue if we have some appropriate language in the employment contract, because it is an employment contract, as well as some expectations of the appointee. So
tell me, did we not try that with the current Integrity Commissioner with his employment contract? I remember the 60 days was the original time frame, and we were told that it wasn't workable because, again, the Integrity Commissioner is not a subordinate to council, nor do you want them to be. You want them to be completely independent. And by limiting their ability on an investigation, you could sort of compromise the quality of that investigation.
So through the Deputy Mayor, without sort of trying to nail every aspect of that, I would submit, for example, this bylaw, it's been recommended, will be reviewed at the end of a 2-year period. Perhaps it would be a 2-year contract with a review provision. There are probably a number of ways that council can put some mechanisms in place to make sure that there's an appointee who will respond promptly and deal with these matters as they arise. It's going to be very important in terms of the Lobbyist Registry, particularly because it's the lobbyists who will be investigated. So there's that much more onus to have the timeliness addressed. And I would submit there are certainly mechanisms to do that.
Okay, and I guess you indicated in your comments that it's what's being proposed is a 2-year review. I can tell you with the bus lane, 2-year review would be 1 year and 6 months longer than it needs to be. So I guess my question is, why 2 years, not 1 year?
Through the Deputy Mayor, that is what was requested.
I have Councillor McCaddy.
Okay.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I just want to check in with legal on this, because I don't think this is as scary as it sounds. I mean, we're going through all these scenarios, and I'm just going to pick up on Councillor Pasuda's one, because it was very clear. So notwithstanding the exemptions that were talked about, all someone has to do who's lobbying, who's a lobbyist in that sense, has to do is to register, to say who they are, who they're lobbying, and what the topic is. End of story. It's not a scary situation, I don't think. So I wonder if I can just have that clarified. That's really what we're talking about, the essence of this. So it's about accountability and transparency. It's not about providing all the details of every intimate thing that they'd be talking about. And of course, this is notwithstanding the exemptions that are in the bylaw, including the one about sensitive discussions, the Maple Leaf. We keep picking on that one, the Canada Bread example or whatever. Just to clarify, because I think we're perhaps missing that item, which is the essence of the bylaw.
Through the Deputy Mayor, that's exactly right. And that's set out in Section 7. It's really quite, I guess, just succinct what is required. It's nothing more, nothing less than who they are, who they're lobbying, the subject matter, and the start and finish date. So,
thanks for that, Janice, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So I think even in the situation that Councillor Pasuda described, even that organization going ahead and registering anyways, they don't have to by the sounds of things, based on Janice's response and the exemptions, but even them registering anyways, saying we're going to speak to Councillor Pasuda or Councillor McCaddy, and here's the topic, and they don't have to report, provided they're just dealing with that topic. They don't have to register again for another year, provided the topic doesn't change. I think that's all they have to do. So if I'm a company, I'd probably register anyways, because I just don't want any confusion. I don't want somebody watching me walk in the front door of City Hall and wonder what I'm up to. Anyways, that would just be how I would see it.
Okay, thank you for that. I have no further questions on the. Oh, sorry, Councillor Marula, I did. Yes, this is on the information report right now. Go ahead.
Quick point related to clarity. The issue surrounding the deadline, which I'm requesting with respect to the registrar and the IC,
correct,
is related to parameters set within the employment contract.
Yes.
Parameters set within the employment contract.
Yep.
And that penalties be attached to that employment contract if a request for an extension is not requested, which is the case presently.
And I'll come to you for an amendment on 9.2 on that issue. On 8:15, the information report. Move to receive that information report. It's moved by Partridge, seconded by Johnson. All those in favor, that carries. Thank you. 8:16 we've already dealt with. It was the Pan Am issue. 9.1 we've already dealt with. That's the McMaster University's application. 9.2, Councillor McCaddy.
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, as I understand it, the process is for me to move, seconded by Councillor Marula, to lift the motion that's before us.
All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, I would move this motion, seconded by Councillor Marula. And where it says, just so people are clear, where it says Appendix A, I would intend that Appendix A would be the new yellow Appendix A that's in front of us today, which incorporates the changes that was discussed at the June meeting, just for clarity. And if I can speak to the motion. First off, I want to thank staff for pulling all the information together that we discussed on June 18th when we had the consultation meeting. There were a number of items we identified as council that day, and they've gone through that list and discussed each one of them in the report that we've just received. We had, if you remember, we had the City of Toronto registrar here that day, who enlightened us on some of the approaches that they've taken. The person presented to us. We heard from several folks from the Chamber of Commerce, and Erin is here today. Thanks for being here all day. And Mr. DeCaria from the Home Builders on some of the business concerns, and we've heard about that again today. And we heard from staff, I think, on the Ottawa model of the Lobbyist Registry, which is largely still the approach that we're following in the bylaw that's before us today. So I'm certainly satisfied with the responses of staff and how they've modified the bylaw. And in particular, I'm pleased with the section that deals with the sensitive information time, or the sensitive time when there's concerns that a municipality would have that things are proprietary or sensitive in nature. That's dealt with now in this bylaw, which was a very good thing to see. That was a significant concern when we met last in June. I for one, think that we need to get some experience with this new bylaw to see how it works. We've had comments from probably, I'm going to say both sides, there's probably a number of sides to this particular topic, but people that feel this is not tough enough, there should be fewer exemptions, for example. Other folks think that it's too tough and is going to cause problems with them doing business. So I suspect where we should be as a bylaw at this point in time. And I'm heartened by the educational approach that's going to be is talked about by staff, how there'll be information bulletins produced on particular questions that arise, and they certainly will arise over the implementation of the bylaw, and that there is the review. I'm also interested in the two, I suspect, two amendments that are coming forward today, one by Councillor Jackson on the $100 fee, similar to the Integrity Commissioner application for a review, and the interest of making sure that any complaints that are made are dealt with in a very timely manner. That has been a key problem with the Integrity Commissioner process to date, which is not fair to anyone, whether it's the complainant or the person that's being complained about, having this hanging over them for a period of months. That's not fair. That can't happen with our new process. So with that, I'll look forward to the two amendments coming forward, and once again thank staff, and I believe we've got the right bylaw for this period of time when we're implementing it, and we'll look for clarity as the process unfolds. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. And just to be clear, Madam Clerk, we lifted the motion from the table, which was appropriate in light of the discussion that we're having. There was the old, if we want to call it, the first appendix. I believe, Councillor, you have submitted, or your intent was to include the revised appendix. So the motion on the first appendix, we need to do what with? Just before I move on to other speakers.
We should get a motion to delete and replace Appendix A with the revised one, and then we can amend the revised one.
And we can speak to that after it's been approved. So on that issue, and then it can be amended once it's presented. So just to be clear, hold on.
Just on that amendment that I put change.
Yep.
Does that include all the ghosted areas, all the gray areas?
Yeah. Hold on.
Because if this is the yellow document that we're referring to, which includes the gray areas, so does it include those?
Councillor McCat, the clerk gave us two options earlier, and that was to delete the old report and replace it in its entirety, which I believe was the intent of Councillors McCatty and Marula, and then or we could individually go through those gray areas and add them. I'm going to the mover, and that's why I've asked to clarify. Councillor, your intent was to move all of the gray areas in the new appendix, and if there was a motion then to delete any of them at some point in time, I would entertain those at the appropriate time.
Okay, so the motion that's before us then includes all the gray areas.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, just to clarify my intent, and I think it could go either way.
That's right.
I was going to start with the yellow document we received today with all the gray areas included, okay. And we could, I suppose, subtract, right. Or we could work the other way around. That's how and add. Either way is fine with me.
Well, I'm in your hands because you're the mover and the seconder. What would you prefer?
Well, I'm satisfied with the gray areas in the new yellow document, so I would prefer to start there, and I suppose subtract if the changes come forward with members of council.
So knowing that's the case, then I had asked for a motion then to delete the first appendix in its entirety and replace it with the one that Councillor McCaddy has suggested.
I think I have the floor still, so just
yes.
We need clarity on this. So, for example, Councillor Jackson's intending to put a motion about the $100 fee. It's already in because it's part of the gray area, correct?
Yep. Okay, so I need the motion. Hold on. I need the motion to delete the old appendix, the white one. It's moved and seconded. All those in favor? And now I need a motion to replace it with the amended copy that has the gray areas.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the delete and replace is done, just
perfect.
This one.
Then we're good. So now I'm on to my speakers list, which is Jackson, Partridge, and Whitehead. Councillor Jackson.
So.
Yep. Point of information, Councillor Powers. Sorry, Councillor Jackson.
Sorry about that, Councillor. Just help me with process, please. So notwithstanding we've received information report number 815, which had a number of recommendations in it.
Correct.
So what we're in the process of doing is dealing with section A.
Which is not, we actually have motion 9.2, which Councillor McCaddy lifted from the table that we tabled in June with an attached appendix, revised appendix now.
Okay, I've got to go looking for that one. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jackson.
Okay, so then, sorry, I still require clarity. So yes, this replaces the bylaw. What about the expenditures that are suggested in sections B, C, and D?
9.2.
How will they be dealt with?
They are dealt with as part of the mover and seconder's motion. So you're dealing with both of them at the same time.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the appendix that's on yellow is attached to 9.2. It's
correct.
An appendix to the motion, not to the original report. Does that clarify? 9.2, that's been lifted, has an appendix to it attached here too.
We're good? Councillor Jackson, you have the floor.
Okay, so I'm glad that I wasn't the only one that had my head swirling a little bit over this. Okay, so Mr. Deputy Mayor, we have this in front of us now. We have the new Appendix A in front of us. Councillor McCaddy has moved the entire Appendix A. I thought we had discussed something different otherwise beforehand, but okay, so now he's moved the whole thing, including all the gray areas. My only desire on the grays to at least get something started, and I've come a long way in the last 6 months, Mr. Deputy Mayor, with this particular topic. My desire was just page 7 and 8, having the 2 gray boxes at the bottom. At the bottom of page 7, showing there in paragraph 3 about the onus solely on the lobbyist, and then the enforcement under item 8, paragraphs 1 and 2 there about the $100. But that's all in automatically because of the way Councillor McCaddy has moved his motion. So now I'm just trying to get something started because folks, just like the IC office, and again, I'll say for the 10th time, if you haven't been there with the IC office, and I hope you never are for those of my colleagues who haven't, congratulations. If the day comes, you'll understand where the rest, some of us have been, and the way your lives are in a state of suspension. But that's fine. That's the nature of elected office. It's easy for those who haven't been there. I'm happy for you. But anyways, moving forward, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So on page 2 and now on page 3, because of the way Councillor McCaddy's moved this, that gray box on page 2 and that gray box on page 3, I think, provides more of a restriction and complication, and I just want to get something more that was, if you will, matching the Ottawa type registrar versus one that was extremely more complicated like Toronto. And again, this will be a 2-year review for whoever's here on council. So now procedurally, am I correct in saying that if I can get a seconder on page 2 and 3 to delete those 2 gray boxes, this would be the time to do that?
The hiring of senior management?
Well, I'm trying to understand why that's in a gray box area then.
It was one of the checklist items that we had asked staff to report back on from the June meeting.
Okay. Okay. Let me just, let me back up. Mr. Deputy Mayor, through to Janice. Janice, if the Appendix A in yellow sheets before us with all the gray boxes are approved, is that all very much similar to the Ottawa example and model?
Through the Deputy Mayor, yes, it is very similar. There are a couple of differences. One of them, of course, is one that you've just referenced on page 2, which makes the Lobbyist Registry apply to the hiring process for the senior management team, and that is, I would say, particular to Hamilton's registry.
So we want the Lobbyist Registrar to hire our senior management team?
Through the Deputy Mayor, no.
Is that what the gray box says? Hold it, folks, please. Is that what the gray box says?
If I can sort of clarify, and I'm sorry if I misspoke. No, what that gray box means is that if there is to be lobbying of public office holders with regard to who should be hired in a senior management position, for example, as the city solicitor or the general manager of something or the city manager, then whoever's doing the lobbying behind the scenes would have to register as a lobbyist.
And this would be unique to us? Ottawa doesn't have this?
That's correct.
And what about on page 3, Janice? Does that gray box that Councillor McCaddy's included right now, is that part of Ottawa's?
No, through the Deputy Mayor, the guiding principles was requested. It was on the list of asks that arose as a result of the June consultation. And some other organizations, and I'm not sure which, have guiding principles in policies. But this simply provides a guiding principle statement or a statement of principle that council could have in the Lobbyist Registry bylaw, should it choose.
Does Ottawa have this?
No, they do not.
So here we go now, straying more into away from what I thought we were at least just trying to get something approved for the next term of council to see how it's going to unfold. And we know all the difficulties with the IC office. Several of my colleagues have already talked about time frames, meeting deadlines, which we really can't impose, but that's been a point of frustration for some of my colleagues. So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I want to support this today. I wanted the onus on page 7 on the lobbyist. I wanted the $100 fee, but now I've got a complication because on page 2 and 3, you got these extra gray boxes included. So I'll wait to hear from others, but I really would have preferred, well, I'll be happy at the appropriate time to delete those 2 gray boxces if I can get a seconder.
I have I can come back to you. I have a speakers list first of Partridge,
Thanks,
Whitehead,
Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Somebody else. Councillor McCaddy, did you ding for a second time? I heard somebody just now and I missed it. Was it you for a second time? Okay, so I have Councillor Partridge next and then Councillor Whitehead.
All right, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And I too support this, and I just wanted to thank the citizens who were sitting on the Accountability and Transparency Committee, of which I was a part, and they're Dave Arbuckle, David Broom, Laura Ryan, and Joanna Chapman. And I mean, these folks, they stuck with it for all those years, trying to move it forward. And I must say, I'm just pleased that, you know, it sounds like this is going to be moved today and voted on. And I think really it's taken long enough, and it's not as scary as I think some folks are feeling. And I hear what some of the councillors are saying about the Integrity Commissioner. I do think that is an area that needs to be tightened up and addressed, but I think we can do that when we look at the hiring process for the registrar and at the Integrity Commissioner position at that time. And I think that would be a prudent thing for us to do. I'm okay with the gray boxed areas that are here, for them to be all included. But again, if there is a comfort zone around the table to remove one of them, I don't see that as being unacceptable or onerous, but it really is up to the mover and the seconder. But if it gives some further comfort to my councillor across the way, my councillor colleague, then I would absolutely support that. And he's right, he has come a long way over the last 6 months, and I personally very much appreciate the willingness of all of council to revisit this, because I think it is very much a prudent thing to do. I don't believe that we need to follow along with any other municipality, being Toronto or Ottawa. I always prefer to have made in Hamilton solutions. But this again is going to be revisited in 2 years' time. And so we can, whoever is around this table at the time will be able to revisit it, and we'll have some learnings that will come out of the 2 years that it's been enacted. Those are my comments, and I very much support this, and I encourage everyone around the table to just keep moving forward on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitehead.
Well, I certainly do not have any problems with all the grey areas. I think it's pretty inclusive. Having said that, getting into the motion itself, I think 2 years is too long. I indicated the bus lane is 1 year too long. This would be 2 years too long. The other thing is, I've consulted many people in my community on this issue. And actually, it all started back with the Integrity Commissioner, and I heard it over and over again. Why is the city wasting money on a babysitter? Are we going to get value for it? So I ask you, and I ask the community, do they believe they got value for the, whatever it is, 80,000, 100,000 a year that we're spending? Do you feel you got value? If you felt you got value, then maybe the council made the right decision. Now we're looking at a lobby registry. Only 3 communities, I believe, maybe 4 in all Ontario. 9% of them are not even entertaining it. When I asked many of my residents in every corner of the ward, would you be visiting the registry to see who I'm talking to? And they thought I was not even asking the question. So the question they asked back, well, who's interested in that? Well, clearly there's a vocal few that feel it's a necessity for whatever reason. It's like we talk about bubble wrapping society. It's about, and some will wrap around this issue of transparency. And perhaps that's the right way to wrap it. I don't know. But certainly it will change. No question. It will change and maybe even see businesses move elsewhere relative to access to their councillor. Especially when it's in the context of a competitiveness issue. And I've had that a couple of times. So my concern has always been, is this good value for your dollar? Is a taxpayer going to get good value over $100,000? My question to staff is, are we going to track how many people are looking at the lobby registry for that term? 1. 2, are we going to have, in the name of transparency, are we going to have the names of those individuals accessing the lobby registry?
So through the Deputy Mayor, what's contemplated is a web-based Made in Hamilton solution to the Lobbyist Registry that would be available and could be accessed by anybody, and we would have a count of how many people had accessed it.
Okay.
We likely, the second part of that is we would not have or be able to disclose who had accessed it.
I find that interesting that we talk about transparency, but the transparency apparently only works one way. So for those that advocate for the transparency, for the Lobbyist Registry, who wants it really badly, well, we're going to protect their privacy. And I'm trying to understand if we're really trying to understand whether this is being abused or not by certain individuals. We know that there's certain individuals that certainly abuse the Integrity Commissioner process. The question is, how do we police that? $100? Well, we know we have the $100 on Integrity Commissioner. It doesn't seem to be deterring that kind of abuse. So the question clearly is, would it not be a deterrent to some degree if anyone that wants to look at the Lobby Registry for transparency purpose will also realize that them who are looking at the Lobby Registry will also be part of that transparency process?
Janice, please.
Through the Deputy Mayor, that could be problematic. So I don't. That's a tough one to answer. I guess that might be problematic for us to require that anybody who wants to look on the Lobbyist Registry is subject to disclosing their identity.
Interesting. I'm a believer, and I've said this. I supported the bus lane. Obviously, I don't support it now, but I believe pilots are just that. They're about measuring whether there's a need and whether there's a value. And this is, I think 1 year is too long, or 2 years is too long. I think 1 year is more ideal. I'll listen to my colleagues. Let's give it a shot. Again, my concern is there's $100,000 that we could be feeding kids or doing something else with versus something that is not broken.
Thank you, Councillor. And now I'll go to Councillor Pasuta for a first time and then back to Councillor McCaddy for a second time, please. On the motion. Oh, and then I'll come back to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All that's before us, and I have some concerns still because some of the questions weren't answered the way I felt they should be answered. I'm going to reach out through you, Madam Chair, to our City Manager, Chris Murray. Mm-hmm. My question is, what's before us here today, including the gray boxes in here? Do you think this is going to affect any way businesses coming to the City of Hamilton looking for a place to settle down and grow? Do you think this here is going to have any effect? Through Madam Chair, please.
Okay, Mr. Murray.
Through Madam Chair, I think this same question was asked by Councillor Ferguson, I think the last time we were talking about this of me. And, it might give some people cause to pause and think, but I would like to think that the final business decision that someone makes, is going to consider a whole variety of things, I'd be a little surprised someone that's about to make an investment of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in this community where they stand to make a reasonable profit is going to be deterred by a lobbyist registry. That's just, is that based on any, experience, or it's just what I think. I'm not basing it on any experience or any kind of other knowledge. So I think, the opportunities that are availing themselves in Hamilton right now to, the business community are significant. And, I really don't think at the end of the day it's going to amount to a wall for them to have to climb over to, be successful here. I think it's, it just speaks to the fact that, we're going to be transparent about our business dealings, and hopefully it builds more respect and trust for the good decision makings that you guys make and that we make as senior management. So I'm not afraid of it. At the end of the day, I have no difficulty being transparent, and maybe it says something positive about us as a community.
Okay, thank you for that. And through you, Deputy Mayor Collins, one more. You're comfortable to you, Mr. Murray, you're comfortable with the blackout period and the way it was brought before us today, and that can be worked through, particularly ones like Canada Bread and Maple Leaf did, that so we can continue to do something like that? You can, not we, because we weren't part of that process particularly. So.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think that was I mean, it's, people will be, aware. I mean, at the end of the day, I do think that, we will continue to be successful. The large companies will continue to want to do business with us. I just, I don't know. I'm not as concerned as maybe some people are about that. So it's just the way I feel.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Mr. Murray. Thank you.
McCaddy for a second time.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I just listening to the comments around the table, Councillor Jackson, maybe to begin with. The addition of the guiding principles did come from the Toronto experience. The registrar was here that day, and we said, well, that's an interesting idea. Refer that to staff along those list of 15 or whatever we referred. So I think that's neither here nor there. I think we could probably remove that, and I would move to do so at the appropriate time. The one previous to that, the very first one, hiring, promoting senior management, I think that was introduced by others, and I expect others will speak to that in a moment, so I'll leave that one alone. And the only other little issue Stephanie just raised with me, an item B and item C, which talk about the cost for the FTE policy analyst, $92,000 annually, the lobbyist register position, $22,000. Just following Mike's comments, we should probably formally say, and that those amounts be referred to the 015 budget, just so anybody picking this up and reading it will understand where the dollars are coming from or could come from if the next council makes that decision. So I'll make those three changes either now or in a couple of moments.
Okay, so I'll go to you right now because I have Councillor Marula next with his amendment, and I'll ask now that you move those three. Sorry,
so,
Mike, just hold on one second.
Sorry.
Yeah. Mr. Zagarek.
Yeah.
Just through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Previously, I had mentioned that recommendations B and C would be budget pressures in 2015. And what I meant by that is, you may recall during the budget process, we identify in-year council approvals as pressures. So given that the timeline in recommendation A has an effective date of March 31st, 2015, I would assume that staff would have to act on the policy analyst and the registrar, and would seek approval for that funding today, if approved by committee, and approved by council next week. So again, referring it to the 2015 budget process would likely not provide staff the appropriate amount of time to act on recommendations B and C.
So we'd work from the assumption it's built into the budget, but it is a pressure.
Yeah, so that's just a comment from Mike then. Okay. So the only thing I would do at this point, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is to move, seconded by Councillor Jackson, to remove the gray box that's headed up addition of guiding principles.
Okay, so it's moved by Councillor McCaddy, seconded by Councillor Jackson to remove that. All in favor? Carries. Thank you. And now I'm going to Councillor Marul. Oh, sorry, I have Councillor Powers before I go on to the next amendment. Yes.
So sorry, and this involves Mr. Zagarek and Ms. Catarini. Is Janice made mention about kind of the format that was evolving into the spring and things such as that. This has an effective date of March the 31st. Our Integrity Commissioner's contract expires in July of 2015. One of the suggestions here is that it can be combined with the Integrity Commissioner. Are the dates lining up? My thinking is they're not lining up. So,
Rose, on that process?
Maybe the effective date is July 15th rather than March the 15th, or I don't know.
Yes, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you, if you look at item 14 of the report, it's the process to implement the bylaw. That's exactly the suggestion. The March date won't work at this point in time. By the time we get postings up, and we're kind of running an election in the clerk's office right now, so we won't be able to get all this stuff done in time for implementation of March. We could go to July to coincide with the IC contract, so that it all could gel together. So we would be looking for that kind of an amendment to the enforcement time.
Councillor?
Okay, are you okay with that? Okay, I would move the change be made to, when actually is the contractual date?
End of July.
So August 1st? Okay,
Okay,
so I'll move
So
that.
the effective date is August 1st now.
Correct. On the amendment, on that amendment in particular, Councillor Whitehead, or on something else? Okay, so on the amendment, moved and seconded, all those in favor of the August 1st date? Carries, thank you. Now, I have Councillor Marula next on his amendment, and then I come to you, Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Jackson that a criteria be established for penalties for the lobbyist registrar's employment contract respecting investigations that exceed the time limit set out in the employment contract of the lobbyist registrar if a proper request for an extension is not sought out accordingly and appropriately.
Okay, so we understand the issues there that were raised prior.
Just on a point of order, this is moving to the Integrity Commission now, away from the Lobbyist Registry. Is that part of this discussion?
No, this is lobbyist registrar.
Lobbyist registry.
The lobbyist registrar.
Oh, it's for the Lobbyist Registry only, not the Integrity Commission.
Right. Be built into the contract. Okay. Moved and seconded, all those in favor? Carries, thank you. Councillor Whitehead now.
Yeah. I see Joey had tweeted and indicated I was speaking against it. I actually am supporting the bylaw, so I want to make it clear so that we get the record straight. What I do want, though, is I want a measurement. I'm asking staff in that 2-year pilot, because I haven't seen anything anywhere that indicates how we measure whether we're getting value out of this process. So can somebody tell me what the benchmark is and how we're going to measure the success of this program or non-success of this program?
On the pilot aspect, or the reporting back mechanism. Evaluation. Thank you. It's been a long day.
So through the Deputy Mayor, I think we have not really got an idea of the performance metrics in mind. We would be looking and reporting back at the end of the 2 years as to how the bylaw has worked, what the experience has been, where there may be a need to adjust or amend or revise to some degree. So it'll be a learning, sort of an experiential thing that we will be looking at. And certainly I hear the councillor's direction that we bring numbers as well. We will certainly be looking at that, but we would be looking at more the experiential aspect of it and what the experiences have been and what the number of lobbyists registered and the number of complaints, if there have been any, and the number of findings and that kind of thing. So it'll be experiential as much as anything.
So can I'm trying to understand, because normally pilots, you set up a performance matrix for the measurement of that pilot program before you enter into it. You don't create that criteria after the fact. You create it entering into it. So I'm hearing now that we do not have a performance matrix associated with this pilot program at this point in time.
So just to clarify, through the Deputy Mayor, the draft bylaw which came forward from the Accountability and Transparency Committee for Council's consideration, it was recommended, and a result of those committee discussions, that there be a 2-year review period built in as a matter of good practice. It seemed, I guess, to the committee that would be the way to go, and so that's why it's been put into the bylaw. So I don't know that I would characterize it as a pilot project. It's the bylaws going in with the 2-year review period, and staff will certainly bring all of the information and experiences and data back for Council's consideration at the conclusion of that 2 years, and whatever tweaks and revisions or adjustments or perhaps other directions that Council would choose to go in, we certainly would provide whatever support Council wants at that point.
I appreciate that. I know that we created an Auditor General's office that have set criteria for value for money audits. So can we certainly apply the same criteria that they utilize in that process to this review? Can I ask, at least we can do that?
We can certainly apply those criteria that the Auditor General applies. And
thank you.
That, yeah.
Well, are we still on Councillor Muller's motion? We're back to the main motion now. Like the first time speaker then. Okay, thank you. And I can see where this is going. And I understand why. I know that there's this, quote, perception out there. And I think you nailed it, Mr. Chairman. When we started this debate, there was a nervous pause that came over the room when you read out whatever the number was. And I think a lot of us feel uncomfortable with this, but it's this perception problem we're trying to deal with. This. I know not everybody feels uncomfortable, but I do, and I'll tell you why. I don't like spending money, and I think everybody knows that. But this is $100,000 to set it up and $115,000 in annual cost, and I'm trying to understand the problem we're trying to solve. And my test for that is the Toronto experience. They've spent $7 million over the last 7 years, and have had one charge. There's good value for money. And they got, I think, a fine revenue of $750. So that sends me a message that do we really have a problem, or is it just a perceived problem? I like being accessible. I like being people coming up and talking to me because that's how I learn. And it doesn't mean I'm going to agree with them, but I may lose some of that. I'm pleased that the ward councillor is exempt from this, that we can speak to our constituents who have been Fortinos or Tim Hortons. I don't have to put my hand in front of people and say, stop, go register as a lobbyist before you talk to me. That gives me some comfort. I ran a large business for a long time, a publicly traded company where confidentiality is critical. And I'll go back to Councillor Pasuda's questions about Maple Leaf. They could never let that go public. It would turn into an election issue in Kitchener, in Toronto, where all the plants were closing. It would trigger a slew of grievances for all their employees as soon as this leaked, and put them at risk, and they would simply leave and go somewhere else. Now, I get it that there is the blackout request, but through you to Chris, how are you going to make sure you hire the right person in that job, that you don't hire a real son of a gun that just won't issue anything should Neil or Jason or yourself go to this person and say, we need a blackout period because of the best interests of Hamilton, and no way. Because you're putting a lot of faith in that person who we don't know that you're going to hire yet. So, question through you to Chris.
To you, Deputy Mayor, I did a pretty good job hiring you a good city solicitor. So actually, it's not just me. I think there's some representation from council on that decision. So, I mean, it will be our combined judgment that we'll be using to hire someone good. And yeah, there's no question. I mean, they're going to have judgment. This is not, this is not for, people that, have an axe to grind or whatever like that. I mean, this is someone who's very reasoned and very professional. Not unlike, I don't know the woman from Toronto all that well, but, but someone reasonable. So it's, at the end of the day, you've nailed it. I mean, it's perceptions that you're dealing with here, and it's judgment on our part to hire someone good. As with any interview, there'll be, lots of questions and probably lots of scenarios that we'll present to them as to get a sense of how they would react to those scenarios. And that will inform me as to their judgment, and will inform you if you're on the panel to assist in hiring this person. So, and then once we make that decision, we just, hope that, the good judgment they had in the interview will extend into their day-to-day when they do the job.
Okay, and I want to repeat, the confidentiality, and I have first-hand knowledge, is critical in making these sort of decisions, particularly when it affects stock prices, affect the value of your company, and that's all well orchestrated, how that it has to go public eventually, but it has to go at the right time. And I'm worried that, and once again, it's only a perception I have, so it doesn't carry any weight, but it's a perception that businesses may say, I'm not going to take that risk, I'm going to go somewhere else. And so we're putting that at risk. So, but I see where this is going, but I want to put my concerns out there. I don't like spending money. I look at the Toronto model, what the heck's the problem if they only have one over 7 years and it costs them $7 million to do it? And then the fear that we may be scaring business off. Thanks.
Okay, I have no further speakers. We will put the question at this point in time. I had a mover and a seconder, and it is, of course, as amended because it's been amended several times. Standing recorded vote. All in favor, please. Yeah, no, Councillor Jackson was here the whole time, and well, it is going to council, so going to council, right? All in favor, please stand. All right. No, you don't. One at a time, please. Councillor Jackson, Councillor Whitehead, Councillor Collins, Councillor Partridge, Pasuta, Powers, Ferguson. No, because we're missing people. You get them all, Steph? Okay, we're good. It's unanimous for those in attendance. Thank you very much, everyone, for a very respectful debate. Next on the agenda, back to my roadmap, we are on item 9.3, which is a Ward 6 area rating initiative.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, moved by myself, seconded by Ward 4 Councillor Sam Marula, mountable curbs in Ward 6 through my AR money. Thank you.
All in favor? Carries. Thank you. Next is a 10.1 notice of motion for Councillor McCaddy. Just left, and I am assuming we can leave that as a notice of motion for the good councillor. 10.2, Councillor Ferguson, you're next on the notice of motion list. That is the Hermitage Heritage Ruins in Ancaster. You're going to leave it as notice. Thank you. 10.3, Councillors Jackson and Whitehead are going to leave their Canada Post
On behalf of Councillor Duval.
For Councillor Duval's return. General information or other business. I'm going to... Okay, we're moving on.